Amazing moment. Neighbor abandons his bride. Cowboy discovers hidden love in an unexpected embrace. In the heart of Cedar Creek, a hush fell over the crowd like a heavy blanket. The sun shone bright as guests shuffled in their seats, eyes glued to the altar where Emily stood, radiantly beautiful, yet frozen in horror. Just as she prepared to bind her life to Reed, her beloved, he made a sudden dash for freedom, leaving the polished rings and blooms unattended, and Emily poised in disbelief. The stunned silence fractured, gasps echoed, and Jake Turner, a humble cowboy accustomed to toiling the ranch, felt his heart race not from excitement, but a gnawing dread. Why did Reed bolt? What whispering shadows danced upon their love that forced him to flee? Jake lingered at the edge of the scene, known for his honest toil and willingness to lend a helping hand. Yet today, his moral fiber was tested in more complex ways than the day-to-day grind of maintaining the Turner Ranch. There was an unsettling knot in his stomach, a sensation so foreign to his usual routine of simply working hard and dreaming of a brighter future. He had respected Reed, even considered him a friend, yet no one truly knew the depths of feeling bottled up within him, especially towards the very woman he now watched, tears threatening to spill over her in a ruined gown. Instinct propelled him toward Emily's side as whispers reverberated through the crowd, a looming shadow of judgment encroaching upon him for being close to her. He knew the rumors would begin that day, see him as some opportunist preying on a broken heart. "I'm sorry, Emily," he murmured, trying to find words that would grant her comfort. There was a vulnerability shared in their gazes. Pain flickered in her eyes, but within that sorrow he found a budding connection, igniting a tenderness deep inside, an affection long hidden from the bright gaze of the world. Before he could fully explore that burgeoning warmth between them, his hand stumbled upon a wooden box in the barn days later, a relic of his grandfather's forgotten legacy, tools surrounded by sketches, plans for a craft left to gather dust. Each carve of the wood beneath his hands summoned a flicker of hope inside Jake that he thought was lost, thrumming with the rhythm of ambition. As he shaped the lumber into something tangible, whispers twisted through Cedar Creek like wind through trees, painting him as an interloper in Emily's life, disregarding Reed's abandonment. Each mocking glance from neighbors prickled at his skin, leaving him wrestling with feelings of inadequacy, the fear of being the ordinary cowboy in an extraordinary love story. The internal battles raged, forcing Jake to question everything. Was he merely holding Emily's hand through the wreckage? Or could he be the steady breath she yearned for? And buried beneath it all was a gnawing fear. Could he truly fill the space created by Reed's cowardice? The memories of his unyielding independence began to clash with this rising hope, competing until he felt the air grow thick, almost suffocating. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day wore on as turbulence swirled within him, conflicting emotions twisting him tighter than the leather straps he used for the reins. He learned of Reed's struggles, pressures that drove him to abandon her at the altar, like wild horses trying to escape a ranch. Sympathy warred with disappointment, and Jake felt the reality of his life closing in around him. Could he stand up and confront Reed, risking the fragile peace they'd shared? Or would he slip into the background, dismissing his own heart for the sake of friendship? In those tense moments, Jake felt the weight of Emily's expectant gaze. He struggled with the decision that might break or bind them forever. Would he find the courage to pursue a love worth fighting for? Or would the shadows of the past dictate their future? The days that followed the wedding fiasco blurred together in a whirlwind of muted conversations and hushed whispers. Cedar Creek had always resonated with camaraderie, but now it throbbed with the curiosity of silent judges. As Jake saddled his horse, he felt the weight of the scrutiny pressing down on him. Yet, amidst the chaos of the past few days, was an unmistakable spark igniting his core. He found himself reaching for what had previously felt unattainable: honesty with himself and the chance to be real with Emily. Each morning, he meticulously reshaped the lumber in the barn, turning fragmented dreams into beautiful creations. With every swing of his chisel, he breathed life into the wood, letting it echo the ambitions he once buried. Yet even as his skills took shape, his thoughts remained intertwined with a singular question: how could he untangle the complex threads of his emotions to become the man Emily needed? The realization hit him hard, accompanying a sense of urgency to confront Reed. Jake needed to be brave, to challenge the fears that had long held him captive. On a brisk afternoon, he made his way to the little cafe in town where the townsfolk gathered. It was there, amidst the smell of strong coffee and freshly baked pie, that he spotted Reed. The man sat hunched over a table, his once confident demeanor replaced with ashen defeat. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he considered his options. Could he bring himself to approach Reed, risking the friendship that had once seemed so sturdy? With gritted teeth, he walked over, his boots creaking slightly beneath him as if the ground itself hesitated. "Reed," he began, the word tumbling from his lips like stones into a deep well. Reed looked up, guilt shadowing his features, tightly gripping the fabric of his shirt. "Jake, No, just let me say this," Jake interrupted, his voice steady but edged with emotion. "What you did? You hurt her. You hurt all of us." The words were sharper than he anticipated, penetrating the air thick with tension. It was more than just a confrontation. It was a step towards reclaiming himself and his feelings. Reed's eyes flickered with regret as he sunk deeper into his seat. "I didn't mean for it to go this way. I was terrified." "Terrified?" Jake echoed, incredulous. "You had a chance to build a life with her. You chose to run." "Running was all I knew," Reed whispered, almost as if convincing himself. The confession hung between them, laden with the weight of their shared history, fostering an uneasy alliance in this moment of raw vulnerability. Jake's voice softened, uncertainty mingling with strength. "Maybe we all have our reasons, but you can't abandon her like that, Reed. She deserves someone who will stand beside her, someone who won't be afraid." For a moment, the cafe fell silent, the hum of conversations dulled as eyes shifted toward the two men. The reality of his own heart collided with the painful truth of their past. He knew that tearing down Reed's weaknesses could give him the space to finally embrace his own burgeoning feelings for Emily. But as the tension built, a soft yet persistent echo in the back of his mind asked if he truly had the strength to take this emotional gamble. Reed nodded slowly, shame etching deeper lines into his face. "I need to fix this, somehow." "Then do it. Don't let your fear decide your fate," Jake replied, aware that the power to lead this situation had momentarily shifted to Reed. With his heart racing, Jake stood tall and retreated, leaving behind a cloud of unresolved grief and potential redemption. His mind raced with implications, the tussle of emotions and vulnerabilities gouging at the very foundation of his own desires. He needed to confront not only Reed, but also his fears of inadequacy and the shadows clinging to his affection for Emily. What if, in fighting for her, he lost himself even more? As he stepped into the cool afternoon light outside the cafe, another realization struck him. This confrontation was merely the beginning. He would have to dig deeper into his own heart, face the ghosts that still haunted him, and find clarity amidst the turmoil. That night, he lay awake, visions of Emily weaving their way through his thoughts, a relentless reminder of the choice that loomed ahead. The world outside seemed silent, but within, all was a storm of possibility and uncertainty. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and Jake knew he had to act, not just for himself, but for the possibility of a love worth fighting for. He needed a plan. Would he find courage to declare his feelings, risking it all against the tides of doubt? Or would facing Reed merely unveil more about himself than he had ever anticipated? The sun had barely risen when Jake stepped out of his home, determined to forge a path toward clarity. The crisp morning air filled his lungs as he walked down the familiar road to the barn. Each step counted, a rhythmic reminder that he could reclaim his narrative from the chaos that loomed over Cedar Creek. He felt the weight of the unresolved emotions pushing him forward. In the barn, he faced the materials that had become an extension of his spirit. The smell of raw wood seeped into his thoughts, allowing him to focus. Today, he wanted to carve something tangible, an embodiment of his intentions and hopes. As the blade of his chisel glided through the grain, he envisioned Emily's smile illuminating the deepest shadows of his uncertainty. His thoughts drifted toward the confrontation with Reed, the reckoning that had shifted the ground beneath his feet. It wasn't just about exposing Reed's failures, it was a moment that had unshackled him from his own fears. He wondered if Reed would have the courage to remedy his past mistakes. But more importantly, Jake needed to find the audacity to confront his future with Emily. As he worked, his mind wove a plan, a strategy to gently reveal his feelings to her. He envisioned himself in a quiet moment, perhaps under the large oak tree where they had shared laughter and whispers. What if he laid bare his heart and let his vulnerabilities show? The thought thrilled and terrified him. But doubts crept in, haunting the edges of his resolve. What if Emily had built walls around her heart that he could never scale? What if she was still too tethered to her feelings for Reed? The chisel stopped mid-swing as anxiety gripped him. Those questions gnawed at him, trembling echoes that festered just beneath the surface of his confidence. He needed to understand more about himself, Emily, and the complexities of their intertwined lives. A sudden decision surged within him. It was time to speak to Emily, to draw her into the depths of his emotions. The thought of revealing himself in such a raw manner sent a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. Yet fear danced right alongside it. What would he say? Would she see his love or merely pity? After hours of shaping wood into a beautiful bench, an offering that would symbolize his growth, he resolved to find Emily. Stepping out of the barn, he headed toward her home, each heartbeat echoing the gravity of his intent. The sunlight flickered through the leaves, and the world felt vibrant in a way that had eluded him for too long. As he approached, he stumbled upon a scene that momentarily froze him in place. Emily sat on her porch, laughter spilling from her lips, a feeling of joyful liberation that he hadn't seen in ages. In her company was Reed, seemingly earnest, leaning in closer as they shared a moment. That image pierced through Jake's chest like an arrow, casting shadows all over the bright anticipation he had just cultivated. A maelstrom of emotions spiraled within him, jealousy that twisted in his gut, fear that twisted his heart, yet the undeniable pull towards her still lingered. Jake stood rooted, the very choice he had prepared for gaining weight with every realization that swept over him. Would he step into that light filled with confidence, or fade into the shadows of uncertainty once again? Jake lingered in the distance, grappling with the intensity of his feelings as he prepared to make the next move. He wasn't just confronting Reed's past transgressions, he was confronting his own insecurities, his need for acceptance, and the desire for love that had ignited inside him. Would he step forward now, risking rejection or misunderstanding? Or would the moment pass, potentially crushing his heart beneath the weight of lost potential? As the laughter rang out, he knew he stood at the precipice of an imminent decision that would dictate the course of his life. Would this be the moment to leap into the unknown, embracing vulnerability for the sake of love? Or would he hold back, allowing fear to dictate the narrative once more? The answer awaited him, pulsating with unprecedented urgency. The weight of his hesitation felt like a stone, pressing down on him, yet time continued to tick away, each second echoing louder than the last. Jake watched as Emily and Reed exchanged playful glances, a memory of laughter that once belonged solely to him. With each chuckle that rolled off Emily's lips, his resolve wavered, gnawing at the very foundation of his intentions. Should he cross that invisible line, shrouded in fear, or retreat into the shadows of his own longing? He raised a hand, hesitating as it hovered near the gate. The simple act felt monumental, each nerve ending aflame with tension. His thoughts collided in a chaotic frenzy. The image of a future, one filled with hope, companionship, and love, clashed violently against the fear of inadequacy. He could lose his chance with Emily, a reality that felt more tangible with each precious moment lost. The bench he had carved loomed in his mind's eye, a physical manifestation of his transformation. Would it serve as a monument to unspoken words, or could it become a bridge between them? Jake took a step forward, his heart racing as adrenaline surged through him, fueling a flicker of determination. He exhaled audibly, releasing a mix of hopes and fears into the crisp air. Each deliberate step toward Emily felt like escalating warfare against his inner doubts. The closer he got, the more he longed for clarification. As he finally approached, the laughter receded into a soft hum, and both Emily and Reed turned to meet his gaze. The uncertainty reflected in their faces ripped through him like a tempest. Reed's expression held a mingling of surprise and something else, a possessiveness that rippled through Jake's resolve. "Hey, Jake!" Emily called, her voice a warm invitation that momentarily eased the tension coiling within him. Yet Reed's body language, subtly defensive, sent a stark reminder of the presence yet to be unchallenged. "Hi, Emily, Reed," Jake responded, forcing a smile that felt foreign. His heart thundered loudly in his chest, drowning out the quiet voice urging him to stay put. He absently dusted off his hands, remnants of wood shavings clinging to his worn jeans, hoping the physical act might provide him the grounding he needed. Reed glanced at him, a challenge simmering in his eyes. Jake wondered if this was the unspoken duel he had been sensing all along. Maybe this was the moment he had been preparing for, an opportunity to define himself through his own voice, rather than the narrative others had presumed for him. Emily's gaze returned to him, eyes reflecting a curiosity that sparked an ember of hope. "What are you working on today?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, the light catching her hair beautifully. Just as Jake opened his mouth to reveal the bench, a symbol of his growth, doubt eclipsed his courage again. The weight of potential failure pressed on him. Instead, he found himself capturing the moment with mundane comments about the weather. Each word felt like an anchor, dragging him deeper into a conversation that wasn't meant to be. He could sense the undercurrent of disappointment weaving between them. But Jake knew he had come too far to slip back into obscurity. An internal shift occurred as confidence began to unfurl amidst the tendrils of his fear. Rather than retreating, perhaps he could embrace the uncomfortable truth swelling within him. "I made something for you," he blurted out, the words spilling forth unfiltered. Emily's eyes widened with surprise and intrigue. Jake gestured toward the barn, a spontaneous invitation surfacing within him. "It's in the barn. I think you'll like it." As he turned on his heel, the decision crystallized in his mind. This was more than just a physical offering. It was a leap into vulnerability, a showcasing of his own capabilities that he had often doubted. It represented the future he sought to shape. But just as hope surged, a nagging reminder whispered that vulnerability could be met with rejection, or worse, indifference. Turning back momentarily to gauge their responses, he saw Reed's stormy gaze pierce through the silence, igniting hesitation anew. What would happen when they reached the barn? Would a revelation propel him into a new trajectory, or would this moment shatter his fragile aspirations? The air pulsated with urgency as he pressed forward, hearts colliding just beyond the threshold of the familiar. Now was his moment, yet unknowns loomed larger than life, and he was teetering on the brink of a definitive transformation. Would he seize it, or be swallowed by his fears yet again? The barn door creaked as Jake pushed it open, the sound reverberating in the quiet space, cutting through the tension that had settled heavy in the air. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light that illuminated the wooden beams, and for a brief moment, the familiarity of his workspace offered a sanctuary from the world outside. His heart raced, pounding against his chest like a wild stallion. What was he doing? He was just a guy with a hobby, a dreamer caught in a cycle of hope and despair. Yet here he was, about to lay bare a part of himself he usually kept hidden from others, especially from those who filled him with both admiration and apprehension. Jake turned back slowly, gauging Emily's expression as she entered the barn. Her curiosity sparkled in her eyes, and that alone sent a flicker of encouragement through him. But Reed's shadow followed closely, a silent sentinel who seemed intent on undermining Jake's certainty. In the far corner of the barn, resting against a wall, stood the bench he had spent countless afternoons crafting. It was more than just wood and nails. It was the culmination of a year's worth of growth. The labor had challenged him, transformed him. Its beauty reflected hours of toil and introspection, fueled by the desire to become someone he could be proud of. "I call it a bench, but it's really a representation of everything I've learned this past year," he stammered, his voice barely breaking the silence. He forced himself to sound more confident than he felt. "It's a place to sit and think, to breathe, and maybe even to talk." Emily approached, her footsteps light but filled with intent. She paused before the bench, tracing her fingers over the smooth surface with visible appreciation. Reed remained positioned slightly back, arms crossed and eyes narrowed, a silent barrier that made Jake's heart sink. "Wow, Jake," Emily articulated, a genuine warmth spilling from her words. "This is beautiful. It's like a sanctuary." Jake felt the ends of his uncertainty begin to unravel. Maybe this was what he had been aching for, an acknowledgement from someone who mattered. Yet, in the shadows of his elation loomed Reed's presence, a reminder of the vulnerability that accompanied revealing his work and, by extension, his deeper feelings. "I thought you could use a place to relax, especially after busy days and everything," Jake continued, his tone delicate, almost timid. Yet, the words felt more like an anchor than an admission of weakness. The laughably simple nature of his offering only fueled the whirlwind of anxiety swirling in the pit of his stomach. "Let's try it out," Emily suggested, a playful grin breaking across her face. "I want to see if it really is as comfortable as it looks." She seated herself gently onto the bench, her laughter tinkling through the barn, stirring a sense of defiance against his anxieties. Jake's heart soared momentarily, yet the indulgent joy was short-lived. Instead of feeling triumph, he noticed Reed's expression shift, his brows furrowing deeper, clouds rolling into the bright sky of their moment. "Do you think just because you built this, it makes you special?" Reed's voice cut through the warmth like an icy blade. "Bench or no bench, you're still just Jake." The words settled over Jake, suffocating the ember of resolve he'd been kindling. They sparked a cascade of thoughts, battles against worthiness, reflections on effort versus outcome, and the fear of never being enough. This was the confrontation he'd felt brewing, one that challenged him to either stand firm or crumble under scrutiny. But as he looked at Emily, the defiance in her gaze ignited a spark within him. He had crossed a threshold and committed to this moment, and he could not allow Reed, or anyone, to draw him back. "I'm not just Jake, I'm becoming more than that," he replied, his voice firmer now, the words infused with an emerging strength he was only just beginning to recognize. "This bench represents a piece of me, and that just might be enough." The air around them thickened, charged with a palpable tension that vibrated with unspoken truths. Jake held Emily's gaze, searching for confirmation that he wasn't alone in this. As the silence hung between them, Jake knew this was his moment to further confront the expectations that tethered him, revealing layers of resilience waiting to be unleashed. He was no longer simply the man behind the woodworking. He was a man stepping into a reality filled with possibility. What this could lead to, he could only imagine. But one thing was certain, he was done being scared to claim his space. However, even as he faced Reed, the grower of challenges, Jake could feel the weight of what would come next. Could he endure the full impact of standing his ground, or would he buckle under the pressure of truth? Each heartbeat resonated with the promise of the future, yet danger lingered just beyond the edges of hope. It was time to uncover the depths of his resolve, or to confront the potential of failure anew. Would he buckle under Reed's challenge, or would he transform this moment into a stepping stone for his personal ascent? The next move was his. Jake's pulse quickened as the weight of Reed's words settled uncomfortably on his shoulders. Like the heavy timber he worked with daily, he was at a pivot point, caught between the strength burgeoning inside him and the nagging doubts that had haunted him for so long. Would Reed's mockery unravel the fragile confidence he was clutching? Or could he reinforce his resolve, just as the dowels held together the pieces of his bench? With a measured breath, Jake stepped closer to Reed, instinctively channeling the frustration swirling within him. "You think I'm just Jake? That I don't have what it takes to move beyond what you see?" The challenge danced on the tip of his tongue, and his pulse thudded in his ears. Reed's smirk faltered, and Jake could see a flicker of uncertainty there, a vulnerability he hadn't expected. Perhaps Reed wasn't so omnipotent after all. Perhaps the facade he maintained hid just as much insecurity as Jake felt. The realization invigorated him, igniting a flame of determination as he sharpened his focus. "Every splinter in this bench tells a story. Every mistake taught me something new," he declared, intensity threading through his voice like the grains in the wood. "I'm not ashamed of being who I am, not anymore." Emily's eyes widened, and she shifted slightly, leaning forward as if to absorb the weight of his words. Jake took a brief moment to glance back at her, the warmth of her support fueling him further. Reed's posture softened just a fraction, as if the confrontation between Jake and Reed somehow shared a collective burden, one that spoke of their respective fears. "Are you really ready to own your journey, Jake?" Reed asked, a note of genuine inquiry slipping into his tone. Yes, I am, Jake affirmed, his heart steadying with conviction. It was startling, this assertiveness emerging from a place he had barely touched before. He could sense not just the recognition of his worth, but the acceptance of it. He hated to admit that the idea of success wasn't merely tied to output or craft. It extended into who he aspired to be fully. I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting something like your opinion shape who I am, he continued, locking eyes with Reed. If I want to be more than just the guy with a hobby, I have to believe that I am, and you don't get to decide that for me. For a moment, silence reigned, the air thick with unspoken truths and a reshaped understanding of each other. Jake exhaled slowly, cellular tension coiling and uncoiling within him. It felt liberating, the feeling of finally breaking free from the confines self-doubt imposed. Maybe it's time you find something better to do with your time, Reed, he added quietly, seeking out any regard to retain the moment's newfound energy. We all have our struggles, but I won't be defined by yours anymore. Reed's expression morphed, the smugness evaporating like morning mist, replaced by something resembling respect, or perhaps recognition. It was almost imperceptible but glaring to Jake, who suddenly felt buoyed by his words. He was not simply accepting that he belonged here, he was carving out a space in the world rooted in his own definition of self. As the moment stretched, a new kind of tension lingered, a challenge to the status quo, where Jake stood resolute amongst the echoes of uncertainty and self-discovery. He had crossed a threshold and stood proud upon it, the strength of self enveloping him like a warm embrace. Just then, the stillness was interrupted by the wind rustling through the barn's door, whispering old stories he could finally start to rewrite. His thoughts lingered on the power of vulnerability. Hey, Emily, he said impulsively, turning toward her with renewed fervor. There's something else I've been working on, a project I think you should see. A fateful spark ignited in his chest, a warmth that whispered possibilities he had yet to realize. As they moved, Jake couldn't help but wonder what this new venture would uncover about himself. Beyond the fear, what creativity lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to blossom? Would Emily see what he saw? A reflection of potential shadows yet to be cast? This journey felt just beginning, edging toward a revelation only he could manifest. The horizon held immense challenges, stirring questions about passion and purpose that only he could navigate. What could lie ahead if he transcended past limits? Would he nurture this newfound strength, or would self-doubt linger like an uninvited guest? Jake led Emily into the workshop, his heart pounding with anticipation as he glanced over the projects that filled the space. Each piece a testament to his growth, each mistake a lesson learned. The air was heavy with sawdust and ambition, punctuated only by the sound of tools resting quietly, waiting to be employed once more. He cleared his throat, the ease of earlier confidence rattling slightly. I've been working on something a bit different, he said, gesturing to a series of wooden slabs stacked in a corner. They were raw, unrefined outlines of what he had envisioned. A coffee table and matching benches, each piece echoing the shape of a wave, a tribute to the water he grew up around. Emily stepped closer, eyes glimmering with curiosity. This looks incredible, Jake. I didn't know you had it in you. Her compliment felt heavy with sincerity, warming him in a way that made the room feel smaller, closer. I'm not finished yet, he admitted, nerves creeping back as he pulled out a rough sketch. The curve, it needs finesse, and the finish, I haven't found the right stain yet, but it feels important. It's more than just furniture. It's about the balance between strength and grace, you know? She nodded, absorbing his intentions. It's beautiful, very artistic, she replied, pausing to look at him with a seriousness that suddenly felt vulnerable. The artistic rendering wasn't just a manifestation of creativity, it was a reflection of the emotional growth he was experiencing. Jake's mind swirled with questions. He felt raw, exposed, yet wanting her to see not just what he was crafting but who he was becoming. I've been thinking about how to really showcase what I can do. Maybe turning this into a brand? Designing pieces that blend function and artistry? He ventured, his voice steadying as he leaned into the vision of himself as a creator, not just a hobbyist. What's stopping you? Emily pressed gently, an eyebrow arching as if daring him to confront the truth hiding in the corners of his ambition. Fear opened its mouth again, threatening to swallow him back into the shadows of self-doubt. But he wrestled with it, anchoring himself in the resolve that had built throughout the confrontation with Reed. "I guess I'm afraid of putting it out there, of failing," he admitted. The admission felt liberating, the act of owning his fears giving them less power over him. "Jake," Emily said softly, "you're already ahead of the game just by wanting to create. Failing means you were brave enough to try. What you've got here," she gestured broadly, encompassing the entire workshop, "is a foundation. And when you grow, the failures won't define you, they'll build you." Her words carved out a space for reflection, unlocking thoughts that spiraled through his consciousness. He stared at the unfinished wooden pieces and recognized the parallels, every part flawed and unpolished, yet layered with potential. Emily stepped even closer, her presence grounding him. "Why not showcase your work? Get feedback? Start a small online store? You have something special, more than just furniture. It's a story, your story, and stories deserve to be told." He found himself mirroring the intensity of her gaze, a mixture of admiration and inspiration igniting a fire within him. "You really think so?" "Absolutely," she replied with confidence. "You have to embrace this. You may fall, but every fall teaches you something. Believe in it, Jake. Believe in yourself." A moment stretched between them, an uncharted feeling nestled in the air. Could it be that she was right? The idea of moving beyond his self-imposed constraints surged like an unyielding tide. He could break the surface, cultivate his dream, and adorn his narrative with creativity and courage. As their eyes locked, he felt a pulse of determination, the kind that comes when one stands at the literal edge of transition. But what terrifying leap awaited him? Would he step forward into the uncertain but promising waters of entrepreneurship? Or would he retract, retreating back into familiar patterns? His heart raced with every possibility, and the reality settled heavy within. This moment, this decision, held the power to shape him. "What if I fail?" he whispered. "Then we'll learn together," Emily assured, extending a hand, a shared promise hanging delicately in the air. Suddenly, amidst their exchange, Jake felt a compelling sense of urgency to act. As his hand reached toward hers, he realized he wasn't just seeking reassurance. He was forging a connection, a partnership in this venture toward self-discovery. Taking a leap would mean embracing the chaos ahead, confronting not just the fear of failure, but the possibility of success. As they stood there, poised on the threshold of a new chapter, Jake could almost hear the call of the horizon. But could he summon the courage to leap where many had faltered? Would stepping off that precipice reveal the potential waiting below? The answer felt like it hovered just out of reach, but it summoned him like an unanswered letter from the future, one he was determined to open. The moment his hand met hers, a shiver coursed through Jake, igniting a determination that had long been dormant. Emily's grip was firm, anchoring him in the present, yet propelling him forward into the unknown. The workshop, once a safe haven of solitude, transformed into a launchpad, the design of his future unfolding in layers around them, each piece capable of shaping who he might become. "Okay," he breathed, a mix of excitement and trepidation flooding his senses. "Let's do it." Releasing her hand, he turned back to the wooden slabs, his gaze sharpened by resolve. The world of craftsmanship had been his escape, but now it felt like his stage. He set to work, measuring and marking with newfound determination. Each slice of the wood challenged him to blend creativity with practical skill, a dance between artistry and function. The table's wave-like curves demanded precision, a delicate balance between his visions and the nature of the material. He lost himself in the rhythm of the saw, the bite of the blade echoing the urgency thrumming within him. "You're really in your element," Emily observed, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a smile lighting her features. Her encouragement resonated, feeding the fire he was beginning to cultivate. He paused to regain composure, realizing how much her belief buoyed him. With every carved edge, every polished surface, he wasn't merely crafting a furniture piece. He was sculpting fragments of his identity, reimagining how he viewed himself and the world around him. This was not just about wood. This was about resilience, about reclaiming the narrative he felt all but lost. The hours sped past, their cadence unbroken as Emily moved around the workshop, her presence shifting from observer to collaborator. She picked up tools, offered suggestions, and challenged him to embrace harder techniques. When she suggested a bold use of color for the finish, Jake hesitated. "It feels risky," he admitted, eyeing the natural grain's modest beauty. "Exactly," she replied. "Sometimes the most beautiful things come from those unexpected choices. Just because you're used to a certain style doesn't mean it's the only one you can pursue." Her words lodged themselves in his mind, forcing him to confront the limits he had placed on himself. From the subtlety of earthy tones to the vibrancy of a rich azure, he felt a desperate need to express something deeper, a desire to celebrate his journey rather than hide behind it. He took a deep breath, following a newfound impulse. With Emily's guidance, he blended colorful stains, layering them carefully to create a cosmic swirl that encapsulated more than aesthetics. It spoke of complexity and emotion. It represented every fear he had faced and every step he had taken forward. As the sun dipped low, casting shadows that danced across the workshop, Jake stepped back to admire their progress. There it stood, a piece unlike anything he had crafted before, distinctly reflective of both his internal shifts and the courage he had summoned. But success didn't come without its suite of doubts. What if people didn't understand this creation? What if they dismissed it as childish or unfocused? The echo of Reed's earlier ridicule crept back into his thoughts, dulling the vibrant hues of his confidence. "What if it's not good enough?" he murmured, the fear pooling in his chest. Emily caught his eye, the warmth of her presence dispelling his unease. "Remember, Jake, it's not about perfection, it's about authenticity. You're not just showing them your work, you're sharing your journey. That's the real art." Her perspective cut through his hesitations, anchoring him in a moment of clarity. This venture was about more than creating furniture. It was about embracing every facet of himself, the failures, the fears, and the dreams that might yet be. "What's the next step?" he asked, determination threading through his voice. "Show it off," Emily replied, a playful glint in her eyes. "Let's set up an online store, showcase these pieces to the world. You owe it to yourself." The thought sparked a flash of anxiety tangled with exhilaration. A wave of vulnerability washed over him as he reimagined sharing something so personal with others. Yet amidst the uncertainty lay the thrill of possibility, like the rush of exhilaration just before diving into deep water. "Let's do it," he affirmed, eyes blazing with newfound conviction. As night began to drape itself across the workshop, Jake faced the expanse of his journey ahead and felt an electric charge reverberate through him. Change was no longer an abstract concept, but an immediate reality. But as the first steps towards his new venture took form, a niggling doubt remained. Was he truly ready to expose his heart to the world? The horizon loomed ahead, promising both chaos and opportunity, and Jake wondered if the real challenge lay not in the craftsmanship, but in the act of bare revelation itself. With each wave of resolve, he found himself standing on the edge of a new frontier, tethered by vision and desire. But would this leap into the unknown lead him to fulfillment? Or would it unearth every painful insecurity he thought he had conquered? The answer shimmered just beyond the surface, urging him to discover what lay beneath the depths. Jake stood in the glow of the workshop's overhead lights, tools scattered around him like remnants of an untrammeled journey. His creation gleamed with a voice all its own, resonating with the courage he was only beginning to understand. Still, the intimacy of the moment felt daunting. The sheer act of sharing his work mirrored the act of revealing himself, a synergy of fear and hope thrumming in his chest. "Okay, let's get set up," he said, more to force himself into action than to persuade Emily. The excitement of launching an online store tangled with an anxiety he couldn't quite shake. What if his work was met with silence? What if he exposed not just his craftsmanship, but his vulnerability, and it fell flat? The weight of expectation pressed down, forging shadows of doubt that curled around his ambitions. Emily began to lay the groundwork for their digital presence, explaining the importance of branding. "This is about connecting with people," she affirmed, her hand gesturing animatedly as she spoke. "You're not just selling furniture, you're sharing your story. The colors, the shapes, they all carry meaning." He listened intently, but a creeping feeling of inadequacy nudged at him. How could he convey his story when he struggled to articulate his own thoughts? Each moment that he gazed at the swirling colors spoke volumes of his struggles. Still, was it enough to share? Would anyone see the depths he hoped to convey? "Let's start with a photo shoot," Emily suggested, snapping him from his reverie. "We need to capture the essence of what you've created." The thought initially filled him with dread, a visible inspection of his work, as if taking off armor before an unfamiliar battle. Yet, as Emily set the stage, adjusting and readjusting the angle of lights, he found himself drawn back into the memory of each cut made and each moment of triumph encountered during its creation. Behind the camera's lens, he had the chance to speak without words. With every shift of the wood under the soft glow of the lights, he felt a rapid pulse of exhilaration. The table stood before him not as merely a functional item, but as a testament to his journey, an embodiment of growing confidence and resilience. Emily snapped pictures, coaching him on angles and expressions, each click igniting flashes of purpose. "This is it," she said, reviewing the images on her camera, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "These pieces tell a story. Yours. It's vivid, it's raw, it's human." Her validation felt like a balm against his trepidation. He began to see potential in sharing both his craft and the emotions tethered to it. With every passing moment, the dread of exposure transformed. Jake understood then that hesitation arose from fear, not of failure, but fear of exposure, of connecting on a deeper level than he had ever dared to explore. "Okay, let's publish a couple of the best shots online," Emily said, brimming with excitement. Each click toward creating their online store expanded his sense of possibility. It felt as though layers of protective crystal were fraying, revealing a beating heart pulsing with authenticity. "Are you ready for this, honestly?" Emily asked, her expression dialed back just enough to draw him into a moment of reflection. "Honestly?" he mirrored, his brow furrowing as a sense of clarity emerged. "Yeah, honestly," she urged, waiting expectantly. He took a breath, envisioning the faces behind the screens. "I think I am. I don't want to hide anymore. It's time I own it." The scene shifted from apprehension to anticipation, an exhilarating current of resolve surging through him. Uncertainty lurked, but it no longer paralyzed him. Rather, it served as a reminder of how far he had come. As they finalized the launch details, the name of the shop, the first posts, the about section he would write, Jake felt ready, even eager, for the world to witness the fragments he had carved from his journey. Yet, underlying that readiness was a swell of apprehension. Was he prepared for any feedback, especially from those who mattered most? "I'm going to hit send," Emily announced, poised over the keyboard. "Wait," he interjected, a sudden impulse creeping in. What if we scheduled the launch for next week, just to give it another pass?" Emily regarded him, a questioning brow raised, before nodding thoughtfully. "It's your story, Jake, but the world won't wait forever." Jake's pulse quickened. She was right. Wasn't it part of this journey to embrace the uncertainty? But could he truly stand amidst potential disappointment? "Okay, let's do it," he said, voice steeled yet shaky. "But let's promise to monitor feedback closely. I want to learn and grow from it." The sigh that escaped Emily's lips felt like the final coat of lacquer drying on a freshly finished piece, solidifying the moment. "That's the spirit," she said, smiles twinkling in her eyes. Together, they poised themselves at the brink of this new endeavor, a blend of excitement and fear fueling their resolve. As Jake turned to face the world outside the shop, the night air hung heavy with impending revelations. Would exposing his creations to a wider audience illuminate his path? Or would it cast shadows on dreams he dared to chase? In that charged moment, the reality set in. The act of unveiling oneself could either pave the way to connection or open the door to the unknown. What awaited him in the vastness beyond his workshop remained an exhilarating, yet terrifying enigma. The days leading up to the launch of Jake's online store felt like an eternity, each moment pulsing with equal parts excitement and dread. Each new sunrise reminded him of the commitment he had made, to himself, to his craft, and to the burgeoning relationship with Emily. The promise of unveiling his creations lingered heavily in the air, and with every detail they finalized, his confidence flickered like a flame caught in a draft. When the day finally arrived, Jake stood in the barn, the weight of anticipation swelling in his chest. The very space that once held his insecurities had transformed into a vibrant hub of possibility. The workbench now gleamed with purpose, and the dust that hung in the beams of light felt like an invitation for growth. "Are you ready?" Emily's voice broke through his thoughts, filled with a warmth that steadied him. Jake exhaled, the breath carrying the remnants of his fears. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said, forcing a smile that felt more genuine than he ever expected. As they pressed the button to publish the store, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him. The digital realm opened like a floodgate. Pictures of his newly created pieces, each story captured in images, filled the screen. Names, descriptions, and passion laid bare for the world to see. "Here we go," Emily said, her excitement palpable as she hovered beside him, eyes shining brightly. The moment clicked into a reality he had never dared to imagine. Yet even amidst this triumph, a whisper of doubt surged. What if no one appreciated his work? What if feedback fell flat, mocking the very heart he had poured into each design? But then he thought of all the late nights spent shaping the wood, the moments of vulnerability shared with Emily, and the confrontation that had sparked a fire deep within him. He was no longer simply Jake, the ordinary cowboy. He was Jake, the creator. As the hours passed after the launch, Jake immersed himself in the work, pouring energy into refining his craft further. He found exhilaration in honing his designs, letting the creative juices flow with each piece he envisioned. The store buzzed with notifications, a flurry of interest, inquiries, and sales. It was overwhelming yet invigorating. "Look!" Emily exclaimed one afternoon, pointing at the screen. "You've sold 3 pieces already. People love your work." A fresh wave of adrenaline surged through him. Each notification stoked a fire long smoldering inside. "Really?" he said, eyes widening. The prospect of not just being accepted, but appreciated flickered before him like an illuminating star. "I can't believe this." But beyond the sheer excitement of sales, Jake began to receive messages of gratitude and praise from customers. People who found connection to his work through the stories woven in each piece. As he read their words, something deeper shifted. It wasn't merely the tangible success that validated him. It was the acknowledgement of his journey that resonated. Weeks passed, and the store grew, but beneath that whirlwind of triumph, Jake remained rooted in the recognition of himself. He embraced the lessons learned during heart-pounding moments of vulnerability within the barn, carrying that courage into every interaction. Jake found himself in conversations with customers, building relationships that felt genuine and deep. He transformed from a solitary creator to a booming entrepreneur who actively engaged with those who supported his vision. Each inquiry, each feedback moment became an opportunity for growth. This wasn't just business, it was community. Through this journey of entrepreneurship, his confidence solidified like cement setting in a mold. Reevaluating his own worth became empowering. He left behind the constraints of his past fears and recognized that being just Jake was a thing of the past. He had carved out a rightful place in this world, one where his talents were recognized and admired. Then one day, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Emily approached him in the barn. "Jake," she began, her eyes serious yet tender. "Can we talk?" Concern flickered through him, but he nodded, curious. "Can we take this somewhere else?" she suggested softly. They moved into the open air, where a gentle breeze caressed them. "I've been thinking about how much you've grown through this," Emily said, her words weaving seamlessly into the moment. "Your work, your confidence, it's inspiring, Jake. I've seen the change in you." He met her gaze, feeling the weight of her sincerity. All the fears that once smothered him transformed into energy, encouraging and bold. "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you at my side." Her smile lit up his world. "I believe in you, and I am proud of you." Jake reflected on the geographies he had traversed. This journey was not just a reformation of his professional life, but a beautiful dance with every part of himself that he had kept hidden. "Emily, He hesitated, gathering fragments of courage. In that verdant moment, under the blossoming sky, he knew he must take one more leap. Sinking into vulnerability, he added, "I care about you, more than I can explain. You've helped me see beyond my doubts. I want us to explore this connection." Her eyes softened, reflecting the depth of understanding. The journey they had shared shifted seamlessly into a new chapter, an adventure steeped in authenticity and genuine connection. "Jake, I feel the same," she said, taking a step closer. "Let's not hide anymore." That single moment crystallized the transformation he had undergone, solidifying into a new reality where he would embrace not only his craft, but the very essence of himself, the multifaceted layers of vulnerability, passion, and raw ambition that had all been resolutely discovered. And with Emily by his side, they stepped hand in hand into the horizon, ready to carve out new stories and dreams together. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep our journey alive. Comment your reactions and thoughts about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to dive into this transformative story. Your actions matter.